There's a place inside, you gotta let it shine, let it go. You don't need to hide. Soul talking. Soul talking. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's wonderful episode of Soul Talking, where I sit down with students and spiritual people to talk about their lives with their animals and their spiritual journeys. This week, I'm very, very excited to have a lovely, lovely person here with me by the name of Rachel. Rachel lives in Wiltshire. She's a full-time civil servant. She loves ponies and horses and rode from a young age. Rachel loves all animals. And her very first horse, Earl, love the name, Rachel, Earl came into her life in 2006 when, wait for this, she won the Your Horse magazine Win a Horse competition. I mean, I watched those, I read those things and I was like, oh gosh, who's so lucky to win a horse? This lady won Earl, who's more than just a horse, and she'll tell you all about that. Rachel attended my 2-day animal communication course only last month. So she's a very, very recent student. And I'm very interested in watching where she goes from that point onwards. She's a lovely, lovely person, guys. I felt such an affinity to her, which is why I asked her to be a guest, and she said yes.
Hello.
Hello,
Thank
and
you.
welcome to the series. Rachel, so new to it all, but actually from sitting down on the courses with you, actually not that new at all. There's so much affinity and understanding there with the horses. It really blew me away at times. Rachel, where do we start? Let's go back to the beginning. Can you tell everybody a little bit about you and who you are? I mean, we know you're
Yeah.
Rachel, but you know.
um, so yeah, you're right. I think my journey has been more about working out what all that was
Mm,
rather than knowing, 10 years ago that I was sort of dipping my toe into this world. It's been
yeah.
more of a journey to get to the place where I am today, where I feel I can actually join the dots and articulate what that looks like and how all my experiences in my life have kind of led me to the place and the path that I'm on today. It's not a
Mm,
destination, it's an evolving thing, but I feel now more comfortable to
absolutely.
actually be able to explain that. And
Yeah.
it's been the horses and life's experiences that have framed and evolved me as a person.
So what was life like as a kid?
I grew up
This
in the
little blonde
countryside.
girl running around,
Yeah,
wanting to jump on every pony she saw.
ponies. Yeah, so I have a sister, and we grew up in the countryside in Somerset.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
lovely, lovely upbringing, lovely family environment. Um, we didn't have our own ponies, but we were very lucky where we lived that our next door neighbour had more ponies than children. So
That's really
my
useful, Rachel, isn't it?
so my sister and I
Oh,
were asked if we'd like to learn to ride, and then we were able to accompany our neighbours, to competitions and to do like pony club rallies and just
did
like
you?
stuff that kids do. My passion as a youngster was mounted games, so I was the one flying around
Did you do
trying.
vaulting?
Yeah, I wasn't very good at the vaulting, I have to
I've
say.
tried it, Rachel. I've tried
Oh,
vaulting and I missed the horse.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I used to love all of that, and that was kind of my childhood. And then, like a lot of people, when you move away from home and you get your first jobs,
Yeah.
kind of horses took a back seat for me as I went through that sort of, those formative years of working out who I was and what I wanted to do for a
And
living.
having to earn some money.
Ugh. Yeah.
It always
Um,
throws us away from what we really want, doesn't
it
it? I mean, we can't
does.
always marry the two together, unfortunately.
No. But my sister actually bought her own horse, and that kind of pulled me back to having horses in my life when I used to go and visit her and her horse.
Did it feel different as an adult, Rachel, to when you were a kid? Because you were riding ponies as a kid and flying and vaulting all over the place. But now, as an adult, did it feel different going back to them?
Well, I suppose yes and no. No, in the sense that I always felt that I had a strong bond with whatever my, favorite pony or favorite horse was, either at the riding school or when we were young. That was just as special as an adult. I think obviously you appreciate it more when you're an adult because you understand, that horses cost money, and if you want one, you have to kind of like be able to look after it. Whereas when you're a child, you just go with the flow, and if there's a pony there, you crack on.
Did you pick up anything though from I mean, as a kid, were you kind of open to picking up on their feelings?
There was something different, but at that point, I couldn't really understand what that was. But I was always so close to the horses that have been in my life. And so I didn't really understand why, kind of until now, this period where I can look back and I'm like, oh,
puts the pieces together. Like you said at the beginning, it's like putting the dots together. Is really helpful. So talk to us about how you got your first horse, your very own horse. Well, you know what? I want to just reiterate that they're never really ours, but they're in our care. But you know what? This is so exciting to hear about. Please tell us.
Well, when I was at the riding school, that was the time where the Your Horse magazine was running its competition to win a horse. And I'd seen this, I can't remember if I was the second year they ran it, but it was fairly near the beginning, but I definitely wasn't the first. But I'd followed the lady that had won, that I read about the year before. And because I was so passionate about getting back into my horses at that point, I wasn't really in a position to be able to afford to buy one at that point. But I felt I'd sort of exhausted the riding school angle, really. So I entered the competition. And
as we all did. Excuse me. And you beat us all.
It started off with, lots of questions in the magazine, and you had to submit all your answers, which is basic horse care and ridden stuff. What would you do here? What would you do there? And then after all of that was submitted, they did like a sort of, I think it was like a sort of a training day where they down selected, I think it was to the top 10 people who'd applied, and I was in that top 10. And I went to Talland Equestrian Centre, and
where's that?
In Gloucestershire.
Right, okay.
And everybody went there for the day. The morning was spent riding, so we were given a horse, obviously completely unknown. We had to do a flat work session and a jumping session.
Hang on, is this the day that I wasn't invited to again?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Only the elite.
Yeah, so it would seem.
We were asked to warm up our horses and then go back to the instructor and just tell us how we felt our horse was going. And then we were asked, okay, so if they're doing this, this and this, what would you do to improve it? You obviously came up with an answer. And then after everybody
involved.
When everybody had finished speaking, they were like, okay, go off and do it then. It really helped me because I was able to show that I could actually get a horse, going and doing the job without it being given to me on a plate. Like I actually had to work with the horse to motivate it.
A partnership. You had to create that partnership to work together. Yeah.
That's right. And I think it was, on reflection, it was more that jumping session that I think put me, up the order, as it were. And then after the riding in the morning, we then were doing sort of stable management stuff. And, it would be like, right, okay, put tack on this horse, or do these rugs up, put travel stuff on this horse. Yeah, it was a very intense day. And of course, you didn't, there were just people with clipboards everywhere. You didn't know if you were doing well versus somebody
it sounds really scary.
Absolutely.
goodness.
Yeah. But then after that day, they contacted me to say I'd been down selected to a final 3.
Like the X
And
Factor,
then,
isn't it?
yeah, so then the final step was they had to come out from the magazine and have a look at where you propose to keep the horse, have a look at the surroundings, understand a bit more about you as a person, because they obviously wanted to follow the horse and rider's journey a little bit in the magazine.
Mm.
And they wanted to just make sure that you had a viable setup, etc.
Did you have a setup, or was it like
Yeah,
desperately clutching to find somewhere quickly when you found out?
no, I decided that I could keep the horse at the riding centre on livery there. Obviously nothing to do with the riding centre, but that could be where I could keep it, and that was commutable and everything from my home. And yeah, and then basically after they came out, they met my like favourite riding school horse who had really inspired me to enter the competition in the first place. And they could see the partnership I built with him in a very sort of short period of time. And then I had just started a new job in Bristol at the time, and they rang me on
In
about
MI5?
yeah, in the first week of my new job, they rang me at work and basically just gave me like life-changing news over the phone. And of course, you don't want to like screen the place down when you don't know anybody. But yeah, that was an interesting phone call. And
To
yeah,
say what? That you'd won?
yeah, that I'd won. And then my initial reaction was, oh my
Gosh.
goodness me, I can't look after a horse. I can't look after a horse. But then after I calmed down, I realized that I could do it, and it was incredible.
And of course, with that competition, some people might not realize it's not that they've already got a horse for you. So what happened? How did you come to find a horse? Because he didn't sort of get delivered on a trailer.
No, they sensibly they gave me a budget and they asked me to go and find, what I deemed to be my perfect horse,
Oh,
which was pressure in itself, as he was my first horse. I had no idea really what I was looking for.
yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I went and did. And yeah, I basically found Earl in
Earl.
Tesco. And he was an ex-race horse. He was 7 at the
Wow.
time.
He
He
was
was
7.
Yeah, he was 7, um, but had just come out of sort of training. I think he'd been out of training for 6 months or so.
Oh,
Yeah, as soon as I saw him over the stable door, that was it. I knew he was going to be my horse. And
right. You say you know. So what do you mean by that? You just know. What is that feeling for people listening to this and watching this? What are you talking about? How did you know? How, what, where was that coming from?
I think it's the unwritten thing, isn't it? It's that it's perfect. And it's like a feeling of it's perfect. On paper, it wasn't perfect at all because he was an absolute nutcase and he was so green and he was so wild. He was your stereotypical kind of thoroughbred rather than a nice, gentle one.
Or just
Um,
lost? He
yeah,
obviously
just lost.
not so much a nutcase, but just lost,
Completely
not
lost.
understanding and confused.
No, and he hadn't enjoyed his racing time, and then all of
No
a
surprise
sudden
there.
he was being passed to new people were sitting on him, and that was that
Oh,
was what I inherited. But there was something about him.
yeah.
I rode him around the arena, and I remember
Stayed
coming
on.
to yeah, I managed to stay on,
Yeah.
but like literally he would land from a fence and just shoot off and there was nothing I could do.
Oh
um
gosh.
and I just loved every minute. I had like the
Did you?
biggest smile on my face. And then basically once we'd agreed in principle, that the sale could go
Yeah.
ahead for him, the Your Horse magazine had to come and like approve the sale, so they needed to make sure I wasn't buying something that was completely unsuitable.
A wild
Yeah,
Mustang.
yeah, a wild Mustang, just a wild thoroughbred instead.
Yeah.
But he was so kind. He was so kind that I think is what I connected to with him and him to me.
Kindness.
Yeah, and that was
You both needing a friend. You both wanting a friendship to create a partnership. Just two souls looking for something.
Yeah, and because he hadn't enjoyed his time in racing, he was really looking for that one-to-one relationship, the stability of that. And of course, that's all I ever wanted to give him, was to be his sort of best friend. And that was it. It was just me and him skipping along then for 9 whole years.
Is friendship different with a horse to a person?
Yes, I think so. You communicate in a different way. With humans, we rely so much on our physical language. With horses, you have to connect in a slightly deeper way.
Energy.
And I think it was the energy between us, that I'm a very sort of calming person and he was a very high octane person.
It's like you and me, isn't it? I'm bouncing off the ceiling and you're very together, composed.
Well, trying.
Sometimes you're composed. Come on.
But so we basically learnt kind of everything together, really. I was moving into horse ownership rather than just horse riding.
Yeah, big responsibility.
Huge. And one I took very seriously, and he was coming out of sort of a military operation effectively within the racing world, and all the sort of intensity that comes with that. And
institutionalized.
Absolutely,
conditioned,
very much so. And he was trying to find his own identity, and we were sort of trying to build a new identity together, which was lovely.
Did you?
We did. And there was kind of, he was that horse that there was no sort of easy days with Earl. But I don't mean that in a negative way, because he was always so kind and genuine. I just mean he took a lot of, I had to learn a lot in order to help him. But I think my intention to help was always the most important thing.
It's about the intention. You were coming from the right place, wanted to help him. And as a result of that, you created a really wonderful partnership. Not always easy. But you're solid, and my understanding of meeting you is quite a calm person. There is a sensitivity there, but I think that I do kind of feel a horse would feel quite safe with you around them.
And I think I didn't really appreciate that at the time, but I think now that is one of my strongest points, if you like, when I'm around animals, is I become a safe place for them.
Very steady. So what did you go on to do with him?
We dipped our toe in the water of eventing.
Did you?
Yeah, so we did lots of eventing at 90 and B100 levels. We won 2 B90s along the way. Earl was very good on the flat. We really loved our dressage together. He was an absolute machine cross country. Just, that freedom of galloping and jumping he loved. I just had to keep up,
which is quite a speed.
It was quite a speed, but so we both learned to adjust to that.
Did you? Good, that's good.
And show jumping wasn't either of our fortes really, especially his, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it basically, his entire back was kissing spines and he couldn't bend his back properly, and so that was why he couldn't lead the show jumps up.
That wasn't picked up on any vetting?
No, and at that time, we're talking sort of over quite 10 years ago now. You didn't, he was a lower level sort of purchase, you don't sort of do x-rays like you do today. So he just had a normal 5-stage vetting which he flew through, but you had some really good
really good amazing moments,
experiences together.
Amazing. My goodness. and also, I guess, sadness, because ultimately, did you lose him while he was in your
Yeah,
life?
so I lost him age 16, and
Right.
basically what happened was his body just crossed a line that it couldn't come back from. And all of a sudden, the things he was finding easy, or he just then couldn't do. And I was like, whoa, that's odd. But like with a lot of horses, if they're not lame, if they don't have bits falling off, nobody wants to have a conversation about he's not quite right.
Well, animals are
But
very good at hiding what's going on as
mm,
well, being herd animals, aren't they? So
that's right. Yeah. And so all I knew was he wasn't quite right.
you
Um,
knew, yeah,
so but I knew it was literally overnight, Richard. He changed, something in him changed. And
really,
yeah, so even though he wasn't lame, obviously the vet investigations, could quite clearly see what his problems were, and to the extent that they now were present. We tried to manage him. We tried to, help him from a veterinary perspective, and that worked for a short period of time. But then he was uncomfortable again, and there were
yeah.
no options left. So, yeah, hardest day of my life, number one.
It must have been really, really hard.
Hmm.
Um, how did you cope with it?
Uh, Not very well, if I'm honest, because he was truly my best friend in the world. And, 9 years, almost every day of those 9 years, I saw him and valued every moment that we spent together.
Yeah.
So very difficult to then let that go.
To suddenly
Um,
have nothing in that,
well, I had already bought my second horse by then.
by the
Um,
name of,
Buzz.
as in Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah.
I love it. He was my favourite character.
So I had bought Buzz 6 months before I lost Earl, and it
Right.
wasn't like it was the plan to have two horses. There was
Yeah.
no indication.
That you were
Um,
going to lose one.
no, not at all. And
Right. Okay.
Earl was sort of coming towards the end of his eventing, and what we were doing. So it's like
Yeah.
he would have done that for a little while longer and been quite happy while I was bringing Buzz on, who was 3 and straight off the racetrack as a flat racer.
So
But
you
it
went for it again, Rachel.
did, and it was only because of Earl that I was able to even consider buying a youngster. But I just felt he sort of taught me everything I needed
Yeah. Well,
to know.
you felt you had the tools.
Yeah. And so I'd had Buzz for 6 months, and the two of them went out together, and formed quite a bond really in that six
Yeah.
months. And Earl always put him in his place, and told him to like wind his step in a lot, because he was Tigger. Buzz was Tigger. He would be you, literally bouncing everywhere. Like the happiest horse you could ever imagine, but in
Oh.
a naive, beautiful, natural way. Um, and where Earl had always been, like, I would call him like grumpy, but not in like a negative way.
Mm.
He just only liked me. He didn't really like any other humans. He didn't.
Buzz.
No, this was Earl.
Oh.
Um, he didn't really like any other humans or
He's like, I'm not
horses.
sharing her. I'm not
Yeah,
sharing her.
but Buzz was the complete opposite and wanted to say hi to
Hiya.
everybody. So Earl was like,
Oh. Is that good though? That's
it was
nice, because
lovely.
having them both, there's a real difference in them, isn't there? They've got their
Yeah,
own personalities,
completely.
and that's really lovely. Bit of a yin
Hmm.
and a yang.
Very much so. But say I love them both like absolutely to pieces. And it was very hard when I lost Earl, because that wasn't sort of planned, or he wasn't obviously a ripe old age or anything.
Mm.
But I did have Buzz, and although I found it very hard to be with Buzz for a while
Did
because it all
you?
just felt wrong without Earl.
Why?
um
What do you mean wrong? It felt wrong to what? To even spend time with Buzz?
yeah, it was really
Really?
odd.
I don't think it's odd, but it's so interesting you're talking about
Hmm.
it.
um but yeah, eventually, once I'd got over that initial sort of grief, I suppose, then actually he became, you know, he helped me then move forward because he needed me. And
Yeah.
he had
And you
learned,
needed him.
yeah, and he'd learned so much from Earl that I really only picked up after Earl had gone, that I just felt like it was it everything was right to move forward with Buzz then.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. That's amazing. Do you have, there's so many people that watch the episodes that you know, yeah, we have our laughs and we touch on sad moments as well, because it's part of life is letting animals go, and what we perceive as death, although it's not death. And do you have any words for anybody watching that's perhaps at that point, and you know, they're wondering, they're feeling like you? What could you recommend? What can you suggest? Tell
Um,
them.
I think
Obviously, it's going to get better, isn't it?
it does get better. But the important thing that I like to remember is like the scale of my emotion and my grief towards losing, you know, both of my horses, when those times came, I felt was just commensurate with how much love and incredible times we'd had, you know, that.
Yeah. The
So
memories,
yeah,
Rachel.
the memories, you know, that was why I felt so sad, because I loved them so much, you know, from the absolute bottom of my
And that's
heart.
important. That's special, isn't it?
It's so special. And so see, it's sort of, although it feels awful, that awfulness, if you kind of transfer it into, it just means how special your relationship
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
And when the dust settles, you are able to see that and understand that when the rawness goes of the loss, you then are able
So
to
right.
look at, you know, think about your memories, look at your photographs, etc. And the interesting
With a
thing,
smile,
yeah, with a
instead of
smile,
just tears and the
yeah.
trauma of it all.
And the other
Oh,
thing which I learned through those experiences is that the things you remember are the elements of connection you had,
absolutely.
not the prizes that you won or the jumps that you
It's not
jumped.
about any of
It's
that.
not about any of that.
And that taught you that.
Yeah, I think so. Because so many people, myself included, go into the horse world and it's all about like a path, you know, what do you want to do? Dressage, what do you want to do? Eventing. And then
Yeah.
you follow a path of training and competing. And obviously I'm just an amateur. I don't do this for a living, horses for a living. But you still, like, if you want to do something well, you put
You're
time
all
and
out
effort
for it.
into that. But actually, when you look back, it's not those things that matter. And so it gave me a different perspective, like a more meaningful perspective to the relationships that I have with horses.
So
You
in
know,
a
now.
way, thank you. Yeah, absolutely, Rachel. I'm completely on this wavelength of what you're talking about, because it's through knowing those horses, Earl and Buzz, that they've took you on a journey to come out the
Yeah.
other side with so much more understanding, on a so much stronger connected way, and perhaps a spiritual way, more than you could have realized. And the whole of losing them as well, teaching you so much. It's not all negative, it feels negative. But actually, even that, in those moments, they're teaching us so much more.
Yeah, and they teach you things that are really important.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that Buzz taught me was he was the one that put me on a path to finding another way to ride and train horses, to be with horses.
Yeah.
He demanded another way. I didn't know enough at the time,
Right.
but he put me on that path. You know,
Did he?
I didn't want to be listening to the people around me who were saying, you know,
Get your spurs on, use
yeah,
your whip.
spurs on, whips on, strap it down, beat it over,
Oh,
be the
oh, and
boss,
this
you know, all of
happens
those
so
things.
much.
I know. And I felt I was actually quite strong in that situation to say, no, that's not okay. I'm not going to follow that path.
Yeah.
But then, of course, it's, well, if 99% of all the horse people around you are following that path, it's incredibly hard to find an alternative that, you know, sits with you and your values, and because you're not born knowing the answers. That's
Of course you're not, but there's definitely, by the sounds of it at that point, a shift happening for
yeah.
you massively. So where did that shift, what gear did you shift into? Where did you go with that?
Well, I had to find different people. I had to find different yards. I had to find different trainers that I felt were going to give me something that,
More in line with you.
yeah, with where I was,
Yeah.
where Buzz needed me to be to flourish himself.
Yeah.
But also, you know, my own evolution was starting then, for want of a better term, and I really wanted to understand what was meaningful to me when it came to horses, and say, you know, losing horses makes you realize what's truly important with them. And
Yeah.
then I've been trying to sort of like put that into action actually when I'm with them, not after they've gone. We had fun, and
Yeah, that's
that,
what we want, but that's so
yeah,
important.
yeah,
It's so
so
disciplined, so much in the horse world, so disciplined.
mhm,
But we've got to have fun. And I think when we go to that place, that's when some amazing moments start to happen. When we realize, just let it all go. Let's
yeah,
start again a different way.
yeah, I agree. And you know, it is very difficult to work out what that looks like when
Yeah.
you haven't got anywhere to go. But yeah, that is where I went, and that enabled me to find out what was meaningful to me and made me understand my own connection with horses, you know, more than I'd ever done before.
Right.
Which
On more of a liberty, natural horseman. So it's like you've moved from all of that and the eventing into this natural horsemanship sort of way of mindset, of looking at things, like I said, working at liberty, a completely different way of
yeah,
being at one with your horse. And through these relationships with your horses, there have been other horses that have sort of nudged into your life, and one of them that's a bit ginger.
yeah, very special ginger.
Yeah,
um
I love chestnuts.
there's a film called Jerry Maguire, which probably shows my age, but there was a quote in there.
You're 21. What are you
Oh
talking
yeah,
about?
okay. um and it says, you had me at hello, and I
Yeah,
feel like that is my relationship with her. From very that very first day, there was something incredibly special. What I have done with her, which I think is incredibly special to her, was I gave our relationship a foundation of giving her a voice. So anything we did, I asked her, or I asked consent.
mission.
I asked, what do you think about this? So I didn't just go into her space and do. I
Yeah,
stopped, paused.
treated her like we should treat. Well, you treated like we should treat each other, or we want to treat.
Absolutely.
We expect to be treated.
Yeah.
Animals are no different. You get
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. So that was my foundation. So anytime I'm with her, even to this day, I always ask her her views on stuff. And then instead of going inside of
Love that.
herself, she comes out of herself to engage with me and the activity.
It's not
I spent
forced. It's not forced. It's
no,
natural. It's a
exactly.
balanced relationship.
It is. And
No expectations.
no, and the most important thing about that type of relationship with a horse is you have to respect the no. If you ask them a question and you don't get a yes, you have to respect that
And
answer.
not push it.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
because
But you see in the
otherwise,
horse world, but Rachel, you can see it, can't you? You know it yourself. People watching will know it. In the horse world,
mhm,
no's not allowed to come from the animal
no,
a lot of the
exactly.
time.
Yeah. But for her, she had to have the opportunity of saying no. Otherwise, our relationship and what I was trying to do to help her was never going to work. So I tried to accompany her to her competitions.
Yeah.
And basically I ask her what she needs, and then I try to deliver what she needs today. And all of that is done through our connection,
Yeah.
and me respecting her as an individual and her needs.
Must
But
feel lovely. It must feel so special, but more than that, because it's so balanced and you're both getting something out of it on such a lovely way, it must feel really special.
Really special. And I think the most special moment I've had was, she describes me as her sunshine. And the way she described that was, when I walk into the yard, it's like the roof comes off and the sunshine comes in. That's how she described me coming in and visiting her.
That's so special. And oh my goodness. And what about you? How do you describe her?
Well, we've always had the color yellow as being our color. Like, that's how I see her. And then
Yeah.
it turned out that that was how she saw me as well. So yellow is very powerful for us. And yeah, for me, it's very strange. Like, I don't know how long she'll be in my life. I don't own or ride her. But
That
the
doesn't
love,
matter, does it? None of that
no,
actually matters when you're in the moment.
it doesn't. And I think my love for her, like that purity of love, unconditional love, goes beyond anything that I felt before with a horse. Like, that purity of the connection that we have is different. I
Right.
can't really define what that is, but maybe she's my soulmate, and somehow we'll always be together. It just
It
might not
really
be.
warms my heart just listening to it and seeing your face and how you come across about it all is so real. You can see it in your face. It's so real. And for someone that's not overly sensitive by the sounds of it, it's there in you. It's so apparent, your feelings are on your face. I guess it was only a matter of time that you searched for somewhere to go to find out more about, or to be
Yeah,
around your own kind of tribe.
yeah. And I think where all of that started for me was just an utter fascination in horse behavior.
Yeah.
I don't think the majority of horse owners understand the horse as an animal.
Right.
They don't see them for who they are, in the sense that they are a flight animal and we ask them into our world, but
Yeah.
they are still a flight animal, and that comes with a whole bunch of needs and ways of reacting to things, which I started to really understand and just love, because the more you see horse behavior, the more you understand what's about to happen or to not happen. So one of the things that I started to notice was the understanding of like a horse's capacity or their threshold.
Right.
So when a horse blows up in some sort of way, and gives behavior that is undesirable, I always start to think about the things that led up to that. Because the thing that you hear from people is, oh, I didn't see that coming. And in
Yeah.
actual fact, the more you watch horse behavior, yes, you do. You
It
just
was
miss
already
all,
brewing.
yeah, you
Yeah.
miss all the signs. Now,
Yeah.
I was the one seeing the signs. And I always think that if you train a horse and develop a horse within its natural threshold, then you don't push it into flight mode. So
Okay.
if you push a horse too quickly for its ability to take in the message you're trying to teach it,
You go
then
wrong.
you go wrong. And then you
Yeah.
understand very quickly the flight animal, sort of instinct within the horse,
Yeah.
and you get that sort of fight, flight, freeze. And depending on what horse you've got in front of you will be that kind of the behavior. Some horses will shut down when you overwhelm them. But what I started to see was the behavioral patterns that the horses started to show as they
Right.
were approaching like capacity or their threshold, whilst being asked those questions, whatever they
Okay.
might have been. And if you actually notice those thresholds and work with the horse within them, you suddenly start to realize that you get a lot done a lot quicker. If you go by what's on your clipboard and you're just, it's Tuesday, so we need to be doing this, this, and this, then you unwittingly break a horse's threshold. And then it's like snakes and ladders. You think you've gone up the snake, but you've gone up the ladder, but then all of a sudden you're whizzing back down the snake and you're back where you started. I started to work out why that happened, and that you can actually prevent it if you just listen to the horse in front of you on the day. And the more I was working on myself and my own triggers and my own ability to be still and present, the more feeling and connection I had with the horses, and the more I could then help them when they were struggling. But yeah, so I
love that. There's still being in stillness, present with them, just being. That's how I see you, just kind of sitting there in. I said it on the course, just sitting there in a field, just being there with the horses around you, and nothing expected of them.
No,
and them seeing you for who you are. This open understanding.
As a human, you have to be, or you have to create an environment that the horse would like and would choose to be in. So that comes from within. An environment is not just the physical surroundings.
And it's the relationship.
So if you can teach the horse to find relaxation, then, and that's its foundation, it can always come back to relaxation. If you don't start training a horse through an understanding of finding relaxation and connecting their mind and their body when you do it, then they'll just stay in flight mode.
And that's it. They've left the arena.
Yeah,
they've gone.
Exactly.
Cleared the fence, gone.
I think a lot changed for me when I started to learn how to quiet my own mind. We talk about going to see our horses and sort of telling them the problems of the day that perhaps we wouldn't confide in humans about. But actually, what that means is your head is full of thoughts about your day, and you're effectively
not
bringing
present, are you?
No,
you're still not present then.
So I like to think of my time with horses as present time rather than me offloading my day to them. And when I combined being really present, really still, with sort of being grounded as well, that effectively started to create an environment that was being emitted from me that the horses loved to be in. So I'm like chief horse holder at competitions. Obviously, when horses are heightened in, there's a lot going on, it's a big atmosphere. I can hold a horse, and I can, where it might have turned its volume button up to 10, I can stand with it and help it bring itself back down.
That's one. And of course, they're going to gravitate to you anyway, because they know that they can feel safe in that situation. Exactly. That's all they want to do, is feel safe in a world of captivity.
Yeah. And then what sort of evolved from there was I started to be called the yawn lady. So
yawn lady.
I can stand with a horse, and within
I haven't yawned once.
No. But I can stand with a horse, and within minutes they're yawning.
It's the energy. They just feel so relaxed with you. This energy that's emulating from you. Get it? Yeah, that's what's happening. Yeah.
So by creating this safe space for the horses to just be, so they could just be with me, what that then evolved into is that that they actually wanted, like I was acting as an outlet for them to release the tension of the day, or the tension that they were feeling in parts of their body.
You were their scratch post.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. It really does. Even Eva's agreeing with that.
Yeah, she likes that.
She's coming. She's not yawned yet, but you never know. You might be moving into cats next because you're pulling her in now. What are you doing, Rachel?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like a magnet.
It's all communication, energy healing. That's what's been happening all along, but you just haven't understood it.
Yeah. And what I was realizing was when I started to combine, the things that we've talked about, all of a sudden I would be stood with a horse and I would feel like a headache, but it wouldn't be my headache. And it would be instant, like you'd flick to switch, and it would be very specific. It might be just there or just here or just there. So I started to realize that I was connecting to how the horse felt. And then I would start to be drawn to different parts of their body.
So this is transference that's happening. Yeah. It's very powerful. It's very powerful. A lot of people don't have the sensations and feelings in their own body in that way. That's wonderful. And it's naturally incredible. Just happening. Yeah.
So I would be drawn to a part of their body, and because they are feeling obviously, safe and relaxed, I would effectively connect to their nervous system. I would highlight to the horses the part of their body that was harboring an element of tension. I don't even have to touch the horse. I can just almost just do that.
And you feel it.
Yeah, and I feel so connected to that part of them. And then once I've drawn attention to it, I don't even have to touch the horse. And then they release what they need to release in that moment. Then all of a sudden my headache goes. The connections that I was having, I was evolving all the time. And I could start to see things, not only could I feel things, but I would start to see images that the horses would show me when I was stood.
Were you?
But like random things, like
give us an example of something.
So with one horse I just saw a flower, but it was a very specific flower. Like I could literally describe it in great detail. And anyway, the horse was basically saying that they needed this natural supplement in their diet. And it was to do with, a particular thing that they were either lacking or slightly deficient.
This is what happened. I see this all the time. This is what they show me. They go along the hedgerows and they're showing you the actual herbs, the actual what it is they need. It's wonderful. Yeah. That's amazing. That is.
So Amber and I came along to the course. For me personally, it was exactly the right time to join the dots, as we've already talked about. I've never really been able to articulate any of this before.
What? Because you've not been around people you could? Is that what you mean? Or you just couldn't in yourself?
Kind of both. As I'm sure a lot of people are, you'll be with others from the horse world and they'll say, oh, if only that horse could talk and tell us what he needs. And I'll be sat there going, yeah, he can, he does. Yeah. But people literally will move the conversation on rather than engage with you because they just think you're a bit mad, which I don't mind.
Again, it's not tangible, is it? So it's the yawning's good when they can see the yawning and Miss Sunshine standing there with this group of horses and they're all yawning. Then people will be like, "Wow, something's actually happening here." But for you to just stand with a horse and say, "I'm getting this image of this flower in detail," they're like, "Okay, so has anyone put the kettle on?"
Yeah, exactly. And I have absolutely no problem with people not wanting to look into this or not wanting to go on a similar path.
It's their journey. You're on your journey.
I'm on mine, and I just feel like I've got something special that I can give to the horses.
You're a very special gift, young lady. A very special gift, and I could see that very clearly when you came on the course.
But in terms of your question, I also didn't know how to articulate what it is that I can do in terms of that connection that I have. I didn't know that, I didn't even know that there was a spectrum of how you connect with animals. to even understand where I might fit on that spectrum in terms of what I can do. But so it was the perfect time to come on the course. Yeah, everything about the course helped me understand me, as well as, you know, connecting with horses in all the different ways, or animals, in the way that we did on the course when we looked at the colours and the different auras and everything. So all of that started to really help me make sense of my own journey. And also, everybody in the room on the course connected with animals in a slightly different way.
Well, it's like you say, the spectrum, isn't it?
Which, like, once again, I didn't know. I just felt, well, I could do this, but I can't do that, so I can't be very good. Whereas what I started to learn on the course was that it gave me confidence to embrace what I can do, rather than keep thinking about perhaps the things that I can't do or are not naturally there for me as of today.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but like embracing not only my own gifts, but that of everybody in the room was really important for me to sort of have that.
How was the meditation? Because have you done much meditation?
I've done a few like guided meditations before.
But it was emotional.
Oh, goodness me, it was emotional. But when I say that, I mean, I probably cried more in those 2 days than I have in the past 2 years.
You got through a lot of tissues. I mean, you know, me and Matt haven't stocked back up again now because of you. I'm joking, obviously.
It was like emotional in a wonderful way, in a special way. It wasn't sad.
I get it.
And being able to reconnect with Earl and Buzz, who obviously aren't here with me anymore, was very special.
And did you get to connect with them again?
Oh yeah.
And how did that feel? I mean, I know you're saying emotional,
but once I'd got over the emotion, it was so special because I realized they were exactly as I remembered them. And I knew that sounds a silly thing to say, but
they always are.
Yeah, but I didn't know what might have changed, but all of the wonderful parts of my memories of them, in terms of their personalities, they were all there in like perfect form. So to see that again was absolutely beautiful.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, and then what I started to realize was that the strong bonds that I'd had with them, you know, over the past 15 years that I've been doing this, not only is still there, but now I understood what that connection was that I had with them and why I felt it was different in some way to other people's connection. And it was because I'd been doing all of this extra stuff with them that I just thought was normal.
And I remember on the course towards the end of it, the way you kind of summed up what the course had meant to you and what you'd got out of it. It was so different from everybody else, and actually probably from anyone I've ever met before. And I thought it was so beautiful. Do you remember what you said?
I think it was about like finding the authenticity in me.
Yes.
Because we all follow social norms in our lives, you know, it's part of society to an extent, but at the same time, for me, this course gave me the strongest sense of me and how I project myself in the world, and how I would like to do that in terms of helping the animals, horses in particular. So I just felt I'd understood me.
It really felt like it. It really felt it was so personal to you, what you got out of it. You know, you went through all that, because it is about, it is a struggle when we've got, you know, we're not great with our confidence when we turn up, and it's a course with lots of people on, and it's all a bit like, you know, and then we talk and we explain about our lives and we open up and look at what is holding us back and that we need to let go of, perhaps. Then we connect with animals that have passed over. Then we have that real profound moment, a lot of us, which you did, lots of realization.
Yeah.
You're so special to have had on the course, really. I love everybody's so unique that comes on the course, even though we're all a tribe and everybody comes with something the same, which is hopefully empathy and love for the animals to help them. But yet, when it all starts to unravel on the course, as it always does with each person, there's so much more to it on a personal level, isn't there?
I loved the colour, the elements of colour and what that means. In particular, that really stood out for me because I had never thought about colours as being relevant in that way before when I'm with horses.
Right.
But I started to realise, in particular with the colours, how relevant that was to me personally.
Yeah.
And an understanding of what different colours mean to me, and then how when colours come up, I'm able to actually, understand that on a greater level again.
So where now? Because that's what everybody's going to want to know in these episodes.
Well,
so what's she going to do now with all of this?
Yeah, with all of this. So, and
you're going to enter another horse competition?
Yeah, I think I might have to. For me, this journey is all coming together like right now. This isn't something I've said to people before. This isn't something that I talk to people about on a daily basis. This is really like live in the room now. All of this is making more sense to me, but also how I can then use it is making more sense to me.
It's happening in real time with you.
Yeah. So I do think that I am now in a position to articulate what my authentic self looks and feels like, especially in relation to how I interact with the horses. And I think all of this is leading me to be the best horse person that I can be, to truly treat the horse as a partner and give them a voice in that partnership, built on proper foundations of trust and relaxation, giving them the support that they need as flight animals to thrive in our environment.
Absolutely.
And to just let people know that there is another way of being with horses.
So beautiful.
Because I don't think, people, unless they've gone on a similar journey to me and they've had special horses in their life that have demanded another way, most of us just follow a fairly standard path within the horse world, even if sometimes it doesn't feel right inside of us. And I just want people to know that, as an amateur who would like to ride and compete, I want to do that in the most partnershipy, ethical, loving way. So it has to start with that, and anything on top of that is a bonus.
It all starts with love, and our experiences of love that we've had in our lives with our partnerships with our animals. That helps us to help other animals. I can't wait to find out what you do, where you go with this. We're actually listening to somebody, Rachel Buckle, who is in real time having this understanding. You really are Miss Sunshine. You absolutely are. I can't wait to find out what Miss Sunshine does next. I can't wait. I know we're going to stay in touch, and it'd be lovely to come back to you maybe in a year's time when we do another series and catch up and see where you've gone and what you're doing. People are going to really, really enjoy listening to you and finding out about the way you see things. It really is wonderful. I can't thank you enough for being part of this. I can't wait to thank you, and I can't wait to see where you go next. Everybody, this lovely Miss Ray of Sunshine is Rachel Buckle, who came on my course last month, and has a massive affinity to horses on such a deep, connective way. Rachel is the last in the series of this series, so I'll be leaving it with Rachel. And thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for everyone watching.
You can catch up on all the other episodes of Soul Talking on my Facebook page and my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.